Chapter 500, On the Rhône 1891 by Mark Twain. In old times, a summer sail down the Rhône was a favourite trip with travellers, but that day is long gone by. The conveniences for the sail disappeared many years ago, driven out of existence by the railway. In August 1891, I made this long-neglected voyage with a boatman and a courier. The following account of it is part diary and part comment. The main idea of the voyage was not to see sights, but to rest up from sightseeing. There was little or nothing on the Rhône to examine or study or write didactically about. Consequently, to glide down the stream in an open boat, moved by the current only, would afford many days of lazy repose, with opportunity to smoke, read, doze, talk, accumulate comfort, get fat, and all the while be out of reach of the news and remote from the world and its concerns. Our point of departure was to be the castle of Chatillon on Lake Birget, not very far from Aix-les-Bains. I went down from Geneva by rail on a Saturday afternoon, and reached the station nearest the castle during the evening. I found the courier waiting for me. He had been down in the lake region several days, hunting for a boat, engaging the boatman, etc. From my log, the luggage was given to the porters, a couple of peasant girls of 17 or 18 years, and a couple of younger ones, children, one might say, of 12 or 13. It consisted of heavy satchels and holdalls, but they gathered it up and trudged away, not seeming to mind the weight. The road was through woods and uphill, dark and steep and long. I tried to take the heavy valise from the smallest one, telling her I would carry it myself. She 999 not understand, of course, and resisted. I tried then to take the bag by gentle force. This alarmed her. The courier came and explained that she was afraid she was going to lose the trifle of money she was earning. The courier told her this was not the case, but she looked doubtful and concluded to hang on to a sure thing. How much is it she's going to get? She will charge about half a franc. Then pay her now, and she 100 give up the bag. But that scheme failed too. The child hung to the bag and seemed distressed. No explanation could be got out of her, but one of the other girls said the child was afraid that if she gave it up, the fact would be used against her with tourists as proof that she was not strong enough to carry their luggage for them, and so she would lose chances to get work. By and by the winding road carried us by an open space where we could very well see the ruins of a burned-out little hamlet, the humblest sort, stone walls with empty window holes, narrow alleys cluttered with wreckage and fallen thatch, etc. Our girls were eager to have us stop and view this wonder, the result of the only conflagration they had ever seen, the only large event that had ever accented their monotonous lives. It had happened a couple of months before, and the villagers had lost everything, even to their stockings of savings, and were too poor to rebuild their houses. A young woman, an old one, and all the horses had been burned to death. The young girls said they could take us among the ruins and show us the very spot. We finally came out on the top of the hill, and there stood the castle, a rather picturesque old stack of masonry with a walled yard about it, and an odd old stumpy tower in a corner of the yard, handsomely clothed in vines. The castle is a private residence, whose owner leaves it in charge of his housekeeper and some manservants, and lives in Lyon except when he wants to fish or shoot. The courier had engaged rooms, but the fact had probably been forgotten, for we had trouble in rousing the garrison. It was getting late and they were asleep. Eventually a man unlocked and unbarred the door and led us up a winding stair of heavy and very plain stonework. My bed was higher from the floor than necessary. This is apparently the rule in old French houses of the interior, but there is a step-ladder. In the morning I looked out of my window and saw the tops of trees below me, thick and beautiful foliage, and below the trees was the bright blue water of the lake shining in the sun. The window seemed to be about 200 feet above the water, an airy and inspiring situation indeed. A pope was born in that room a couple of centuries ago. I forget his name. In that old day they built for utility, this was evident. Everything, floors, sashes, shutters, beams, joists, were cheap, coarse, ornamentless, but everlastingly solid and substantial. On the wall hung an indication of the politics of the present owner. This was a small photograph with Philippe Comte de Paris written under it. The castle was ancient in its way, but over the door of one of its rooms there was a picture set in a frame whose profound antiquity made all its surroundings seem modern and fresh. This frame was of good firm oak, as black as a coal, and had once been part of a lake dweller's house. It was already a thing of antiquity when the Romans were planting colonies in France before the time of Christ. The remains of a number of lake villages have been dug out of the mud of Lake Birget. Breakfast was served in the open air on a precipice in a little arbor sheltered by vines, with glimpses through the tree-tops of the blue water far below, and with also a wide prospect of mountain scenery. The coffee was the best I ever drank in Europe. Presently there was a bugle blast from somewhere about the battlements, a fine middle-age effect, and, after a moment, it was answered from the further shore of the lake, and we saw a boat put out from that shore. It was ours. We were soon on board and away. It was a roomy, long flatboat, very light and easy to manage, because its sides tapered a little toward both ends, and both ends curved up free from the water and made the steering prompt and easy. The rear half was sheltered from sun and rain by a temporary and removable canopy stretched over hoop-pole arches, after the fashion of the old-time wagon covers of the emigrants to California. We at once rolled the sides of the canopy high up, so that we might have the breeze and a free view on every hand. On the other side of the lake, we entered a narrow canal, and here we had our last glimpse of that picturesque chatelaine perched on its high promontory. The sides of the canal were walled with vines heavily laden with black grapes. The vine leaves were white with the stuff which is squirted on them from a thing like a fire extinguisher to kill the calamitous phylloxera. We saw only one living creature for the first lonely mile, a man with his extinguisher strapped on his back and hard at his deadly work. I asked our admiral, Joseph Rougier, of the village of Channas, if it would be a good idea to offer to sell this Sabbath breaker a few choice samples of foreign phylloxera, and he said yes, if one wanted to play the star part in an inquest. At last 2 women and a man strolling churchward in their Sunday best gave us a courteous hail and walked briskly along abreast of us, plying the courier and the sailor with eager questions about our curious and unaccountable project, and by the time they had got their fill and dropped astern to digest the matter and finish wondering over it, we were serene again and busy discussing the scenery, for now there was really some scenery to look at, of a 1449 but pleasant type, low precipices, a country road shaded by large trees, a few cosy thatched cabins scattered along, and now and then an eruption of joyous children who flocked to inspect us and admire, followed by friendly dogs who stood and barked at us, but wagged their tails to say no offence was intended. Soon the precipice grew bolder, and presently Channas came in sight and the canal bore us along its front along its street, for it had only one. We stepped ashore. There was a roll of distant drums, and soon a company or 2 of French infantry came marching by. All the citizens were out, and every male took off his hat politely as the soldiers moved past him, and this salute was always returned by the officers. I wanted envelopes, wine, grapes, and postage stamps, and was directed to a stone stairway and told to go up 1 flight. Up there I found a small well-smoked kitchen paved with worn-out bricks, with pots and pans hanging about the walls, and a bent and humped woman of 70 cooking a very frugal dinner. The tiredest dog I have seen this year lay asleep under the stove in a roasting heat, an incredible heat, a heat that would have pulled a remark of the Hebrew children. But the dog slept along with perfect serenity, and 999 not seemed to know that there was anything the matter with the weather. The old woman set off her coffee pot. Next she removed her pork chop to the table. It seemed to me that this was premature. The dog was better done.